A life in creativity is made by the active choices we make in pursuit of that. It's not about being a passenger in your own life. It's about being an active participant.
Welcome, everybody, to Nashville Drummers Podcast, episode 71.
Today, we're super delighted to welcome Jay Weinberg to the podcast, a man that really needs no introduction. I'm sure many of our listeners are familiar with Jay. He is the 4 times #1 rock drummer of the year, as voted on in Modern Drummer Reader's Poll. Since February 2024, he's been the touring drummer for Suicidal Tendencies and Infectious Grooves, and we're catching him coming off of Metallica's M72 World Stadium Tour.
We talk about his time with all of those things, and we also talk about a little bit of him playing with Bruce Springsteen, just like his papa did. And we also talk, this is the part I got a kick out of, talking about just artistry in general. He's a very creative guy. He's a very skilled visual artist. He does wonderful paintings. So we get into a little bit of that and what it's like to do your own art show.
Yeah, as the title suggests, a life in creativity. I mean, as Nate said, you can really tell that creative passions really encompass his entire life. And it's a really big part of him, like we're not just drummers and he's not just a drummer or just a painter. We get into some really helpful mindsets in terms of perfectionism, how to get better each show and some of his tendencies. And of course, catch his clinic tomorrow at the Music City Drum Show, 1 p.m. And we'll see you there.
We hope you enjoy episode 71. Hugs and kisses.
Well, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's good to be here with you guys.
Yeah, it was honestly kind of a cool thing to read that email where you said that you were, in fact, a fan and already know who we are.
Of course. Cool. Like I've seen, what you guys do with Drum Supply and stuff. Like I've been in town. I moved here about 10 years ago, a little over 10 years ago, and watched as the drumming community has even evolved since then.
Yeah.
And just seeing what you guys have done is just like it's a wonderful thing. So I'm glad that we can have the opportunity to talk.
Yeah.
We really appreciate it. It's awesome.
Yeah, pleasure
for being here.
And shout out to JC and Landon with the Music City Drum Show.
Yeah.
Kind of helping coordinate this.
Yeah.
So you've been here 10 years, and you said you've seen the drum community evolve.
Mm-hmm.
What are the ways in which you've kind of seen that happen here?
Well, so when I came to town, I was kind of, everything was very new to me. Like Nashville itself was like, my experience would be like, okay, I have, the time between loading in and sound checking and a show at like Exit In or something. I played Exit In a couple times while I was still living in New Jersey, which is where I'm from. And I'd explore, check out like the things that, okay, I like this coffee shop, I like this record store, whatever. But I didn't have too much of an awareness of it. And it was only on tour where I got to meet Ray Luzier, my good friend Ray, who actually like years and years later, I met my wife through Ray and his wife husband. Yeah. So it's like, it's, wild how, we make these decisions in our lives about where we're going to uproot from where, the only place we've ever known and go somewhere new and like the wild paths that's going to set us on. That's definitely the case for me.
Yeah.
So, having just only a little familiarity with the city and with like, I know I love playing shows in Nashville and heard so much about it, but it was talking to Ray because he was like, man, like, I think you should come down to Nashville. I think you'd really enjoy it. Like, just getting to know each other. And I was like 23 at this time, our first tour. The first time we met, we were on tour together for like 3 months or something like that. So we got to know each other. And myself, of course, being a fan of his playing and whatever, I was like, yeah, you know what? Like, I will come down to Nashville. I'll check it out. And I wanted to do something. Like, I've lived in New Jersey my whole life up until that point. Grew up in like Central Jersey, went to school right outside New York City. And love the energy of the city and stuff, but wanted just something different to live somewhere I'd never been before, and knew I had friends in touring communities and stuff who were here. I know many, many more now, so many people who I've met in town or who I know from different cities who have moved here as the city's just grown so much, even since the time that I got here. Like when I got here, it already felt like so much new stuff was happening, and I was part of this kind of like swell of activity. And ever since I've been here, that's just amplified, exponentially.
Yeah.
So as it relates to the drum community, I was aware of like Forks as it was in 12 South was kind of like, that was sort of the hang spot and the gear spot that I was familiar with.
I miss that spot. I'm just going to say.
I love the new spot, but the old spot certainly had a vibe.
Yeah, it had a vibe.
And yeah, just, being able to immerse myself in as much as I can of like, I was having a conversation with a friend recently of like, I have lived in Nashville for 10 years, but don't really have, I suppose, your like traditional Nashville musician kind of story of like, I didn't move here kind of like in search of like, I'm going to move to Nashville and play with all sorts of Nashville folks and stuff. That kind of wasn't my approach. I was already very, very active touring and stuff, and just wanted to check out a new place to live, some place that was different from New Jersey. But what I found here was exactly what I was looking for, which I found like people... It was very easy for me to make friends with the folks who ran the drum shop, who ran, East Side Music Supply, who felt like they were kind of invested in what each other were doing. I think from the East Coast, as much as it's my kind of my true north, my like real home that I'll always kind of consider home. There is a little bit of a vibe that's a little bit closed off, and we're all kind of like, there's a hustle there that kind of feels like you're kind of, in your own lane, and there's not much that people are doing to like interact with it or help out or want to help out or something. I felt like that was the case here, that like whatever project it was, people who I would talk to about it are like, that sounds amazing. Is there anything I can do to, be a part of that, a benefit show that I put on or something like that? Yeah. It felt really like inclusive in a way that I think I was kind of searching for. And as that's grown with the addition of like Drum Supply, I don't know how long Nelson has been at where Nelson's is at, but like there's a lot of activity between, kind of the communities that I feel like are represented by like the drum stores where we all kind of go and take our gear to rehab and stuff after a long tour and whatever, and we share stories and stuff. That's always felt very important to me for being here. So being tuned into what you guys have done, that's just an extension of this like amazing community that I'm very fortunate to be a part of.
I love that answer.
That's amazing. Yeah,
like you said, you came here with a kind of you already had a situation. You had already developed a name. You were already working in a big way, and you probably didn't have, or maybe you did. I shouldn't guess. Did you have anybody make the whole like, so you're going to move to Nashville and do country music thing like that?
I think some of my friends were, maybe a little bit confused as to what's down there for you. Yeah, like, well, are you really driven to make country music and stuff? And it was up to me to kind of like, not explain, because I don't have any explaining to do, but like to really like, I was like, look, there's a strong, maybe small, but a strong kind of hard interest in hardcore and punk and metal and that whole kind of cross section of everything that I've like committed my life to seemingly. And I found that was the case here, and I found that playing shows here. I always felt like there was some kind of really, a niche, but a very strong kind of community where I could find like-minded people. And that was the case. I moved here all on my own. I lived around the corner from like, I know that coffee shop is really good, so I'm gonna get an apartment near there.
Nice.
And that's kind of where I started, and just made friends, ultimately like found friends who were in other hardcore bands. We were like, hey, we should all like live together, and we'll be roommates and stuff, and started music projects with those guys and stuff like that. And that's what I was like in search of without knowing that I was in search of it. But once I found it, it was like, oh, there's so much here that's not just what you might perceive on, by watching the show Nashville or something like that. There's so much here. And I mean, Ray is a great testament to that. Ray and his bandmates in Korn, some of those guys live here, and great records are made here, and Nick Raskulinecz has his studio here and everything like that. Like there was already people, I was friends with a lot of people who worked on the Warped Tour. So what, I came down here in 2015, and I was on the 2011 Warped Tour when I was in the band Against Me. And so I developed friendships with them, and I was like, hey, like, okay, so I know these people. I've got a basis of like a friend group kind of here already. And then that just kind of, you know, developed as I'm like always at Eastside Music Supply, and those guys like hockey. I like hockey. And so we're going to hockey games. We started a hockey team together, and all this sort of stuff is like, I found a community here.
Is that still ongoing? Are you still playing hockey?
It's ongoing. I haven't played in a while. Years ago, I developed an injury that was unrelated to like hockey and drumming. It was more something that I just noticed as I would like just exercise, running and jogging and stuff. I had like this weird abnormal bone growth on my femur as it went into my hip on my left side, and it ended up tearing my labrum. Over years of just like wear and tear activity, it happens, but I didn't know I had a misshapen femur. So I had to get that addressed. And so like any activity that was like, you know, being a goalie, I'm an ice hockey goalie, the up down of that is a lot of wear and tear on your hip. And it wasn't ever anything that like prevented me from drumming, especially with like active double bass and stuff like that. But it was something that I started feeling in like the summer of 2018 that I might need to address it, because I'd go for like a run and like 5 minutes in, I'd be like, couldn't even walk. So I had to address that, and it was like it was a couple years after that I actually got diagnosed with a femoroacetabular impingement is what it's called.
Acetabular impingement.
Yeah, and it's basically, you know, like I said, like it tore my labrum, had to have that fixed, and then they shaved down the bone. And I haven't played since, but what I'm actually even more proud of is that the team that I started with Eastside Music Supply, and they're on Dickerson. It's called the Eastside Hellhounds. And it was basically just like a bunch of guys in bands that we all love ice hockey. We all wanted an excuse to just like hang and play hockey and just like treat it like a band almost. We did. We started that, and we played locally, and the team still plays. Even though I haven't played in a while, the team has gone on and played in championships and stuff like that. It's fun.
So badass.
Yeah. So the team plays at like Ford Ice Center and stuff, and I've gotten better. Obviously, you know, I've recovered from my surgery. So at some point, I'd like to kick back up with it. You know, it's my favorite sport, and it's such a great way to just like hang with these guys in the community that we all tour, we all do stuff. So the team is like kind of always like changing and shifting as guys like go out and tour and whatever.
I'm sure when you guys are together, it's even more special because of that time away.
Yeah. I mean, I've even joked like because our goalie is Tom Williams, the guitar player from the band Stray from the Path, and he lives nearby me, and I don't want to take, you know, Tom's spot as the goaltender on our team, but I'm just like, dude, I'll just like suit up as the backup goalie for beer league, which is like kind of a laughing matter in and of itself. But yeah, so the team is still active. One day I'll rejoin, I think.
Man, I'm looking forward to hearing about your return to it. That'll be cool. That'll be
forget
really cool.
drumming. I want to talk about
that's
that.
it. Yeah, returning to the hell.
An update. Well, I want to go back to you just quick, or not quick, but you mentioned, you made a comment earlier, kind of when we first started, about like how interesting it is for these small decisions and things that happen in our life just, you know, really affect, you know, the future, your outcome of your journey. And I feel like anyone that knows you is a true testament to your journey. You know, I'm talking about the surgery. I was going to bring that up. I'm talking about, you know, leaving Slipknot, joining Suicidal Tendencies, being on tour with Metallica. I want to talk about that.
Yeah.
I mean, I want to go through all those individual topics, but in terms of what you commented on earlier about all those certain decisions, because a lot of those decisions that you've made yourself, but some of those obviously you didn't make yourself. It kind of just life got in the way.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, you know, there are many topics right there, but
go.
But and go. No, but I think a life in creativity is made by the active choices we make in pursuit of that. You know, it's not about being a passenger in your own life. It's about being an active participant. And I think, you know, it's something that I learned at an early age. I think having exposure through, you know, a family member, my father being a musician, it wasn't anything that we discussed, and he never even encouraged me to pick up the drumsticks. Really, it wasn't even really something that we discussed.
Yeah.
You know, it was something that I observed from a young age. You know, my exposure to music at a young age, or rather, you know, my dad's music was through his participation in the Conan O'Brien show, the late night show. But even that was still at distance because, you know, I was so young. It's inappropriate for somebody my age to watch that show. So like, I didn't get it, you know, but I knew he was going up to New York every day and playing drums. And for the longest time until the E Street Band reunited in 1999, I didn't even know he was in a band. It just wasn't something that we it didn't come up, you know, and I was raised on like classical music. That was what my mom exposed myself and my sister to, which is actually, you know, thinking about that and the similar ways that like you even recognize like studies that have been done about people who listen to primarily classical music, think about music in very much the same way that like people listen to heavy metal, the complexities of all those and whatever. Anyway, yeah, I think having the exposure through that kind of a way of like seeing it as something that I had kind of like in my blood, but I didn't know what the outlet was to kind of plug into until I found punk rock, hardcore, metal, all this hybridization of genres where doing it yourself and being an active participant in learning by yourself and not so much relying on like the institution of education, but being self-reliant on your education, reliant on your community, being an active participant in a community or in a scene, you know, a local scene. Yeah. I had kind of a smaller than what I'd even consider Nashville's, you know, sort of punk scene, hardcore metal scene. It was an even tighter one kind of where I was in central New Jersey. And we were all in each other's bands and stuff. And it's funny because actually there was like one guy who I know who like also is still making music from that like little scene. We saw each other not long ago and we've remarked on like, man, like, look at you and me still doing this thing, man.
Love that.
You know, we know each other since we were like 13 years old and fast forward over 20 years, you know. And
from the same hometown?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. In, you know, Red Bank, Middletown, New Jersey. That's kind of where we're from. But yeah, those were all lessons that like I learned by watching my best friend at the time. His older brother was a bass player in a hardcore band, doing his own show, putting on his own shows at Knights of Columbus and VFW halls and stuff like that. And there was a local promoter that I think some of us took pride in, like almost challenging being the like we would put on our own shows that like where we were, there was a very kind of manipulative pay to play sort of scene where like, you know, yeah, you got to get out and sell 50 tickets. And if you don't sell those 50 tickets, you got to pay the promoter to, you know, to play, and you end up playing to nobody or whatever. Yeah. And you're just starting out, you're just like figuring it out. But I think that created some kind of entrepreneurial spirit in all of us to like, let's do our own thing. Let's throw a house show at, you know, at this guy's house or whatever, and provide like an alternative to this thing that we're not enjoying over here or whatever. So I've always kind of looked at these opportunities as like being an active participant in these decisions about making your own way and learning that, you know, there's a whole ethos of do-it-yourself bands that like look to Minor Threat, look to all these guys who, you know, they write the music, they run their own record label, they book their own shows, all this sort of stuff that like, you know, we're learning and reading these, you know, reading Get in the Van by Rollins and stuff, and like understanding that it's like, oh, this is like a whole thing and you just have to get involved.
Yeah, how badly do you want it? Right?
Yeah, and just do it, you know? And in that you meet people, and invariably you meet people and some you connect with, and that helps you just kind of push yourself, and you never know where it's like, you know, I get asked sometimes by people I've met, you know, about this sort of a story, and you know, like what can I do to get started and this and that, and because I think it's very easy to look at stuff that's a little bit larger than life that's like, whoa, that's unapproachable. Because I had that for myself, like, wow, what that guy's doing seems totally unapproachable, like from a different planet. I don't know how I could ever see myself doing that. But it was it was important for me to learn the lessons that I felt like I was absorbing through reading about Black Flag and Minor Threat and whatever, of like, you just have to put one foot in front of the other and just figure it out by doing. And that's how I've like, that's how I treated it, even from a young age. Of like, my biggest goal in music ever when I started was that there was a bar in the town over from where I grew up that I wanted to play. I had seen my friend's brother play there, and I was like, gotta play at Chubby's. That was the name of the bar in Red Bank. And and eventually I did play there. You know, I put together a band in high school. We wrote some songs. We got on one of these pay-to-play shows, and we did it. But then that was like, okay, so then what's another place that we can play? What's the next level? Yeah, can we play a show in New York City? Can we play a show in Philadelphia? All this sort of stuff. Can we record, you know, our original material, stuff like this, and just like figuring out ourselves. And that really, you know, I mean, cut to 20 years later, it's really the exact same thing that I've always been doing. It's just like, you just figure out the logical next step, next way to push yourself, and rely on those around you, the community that you found. And that's always kind of been my experience. And that's what led me here.
Yeah, man. I love that. Be an active participant.
That makes so much sense. And it's also the thing that will allow you to never be stopped by the lack of something happening in, like, if someone were to say, like, well, if you move to Nashville, well, is there really a big scene for the thing that you do? Well, not necessarily a big scene for it, but I'm bringing that part from me. Yeah. Like, I'm going to make that happen. Yeah. I'm going to make something that I care about and bring that. And I bet I'll find somebody else that does like that same thing, and probably 10 other guys that are friends with that guy.
Yeah, exactly. And all the things that come that are associated with those decisions, like we say, like, you know, you kind of butterfly effect your whole life. And it's like, you know, through these many decisions, like if I hadn't moved down here and, you know, followed the advice of my friend Ray, I wouldn't have met my wife, and I wouldn't have met all these other incredible, or I wouldn't have done all these like amazingly fulfilling things had I not taken the chance and like, moved somewhere where I'd never really lived before, but just on a whim of like, I'm going to do something different that pushes myself. And, you know, the scariest it can be is that it's just uncomfortable. And I think it's in those states of discomfort that we find ways to grow. And that was certainly the case for me. And I'm certainly glad that I made the decision to just take a shot in the dark, move somewhere I'd never lived, and start a life here. And I'm very fortunate for it.
Love that.
Man, you just keep spitting out truths and nuggets. And my brain's going off with all the social media clips of like, oh, that's a good line. Oh, he said this.
Hey, man, it's true. You know, it's my life. It's what I know.
Well, so you mentioned like, you know, the little kid that may look up to some grand thing as like impossible or out of this world. What is a little kid in you? How does that little kid react to some of your recent, having just come off of tour with Metallica, for example?
Oh my gosh.
Where does that land? Yeah. Let's jump into that too.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, what an incredible
At the time of recording, this is last weekend. You just finished,
right? we just wrapped up. I don't think even a week ago.
Yeah, fresh off the bus.
It was incredible. You know, I mean, when the opportunity comes calling from Metallica to rip some gigs, that's an easy yes, you know, and especially with the tour that they've curated, it's an absolute feat of like, I mean, the effort that those guys put into the show, not just one show, but a set of shows over a weekend where it's no repeat songs. The opening bands are different each night.
Insanity.
No,
and you know, playing in the round in the middle of stadiums with a crowd in the middle of the stage. It's like, no, it's just like, I mean, it was, I couldn't believe it until we were actually playing the first show, what the experience was. And I've never done anything like this before. None of us had. So for anybody listening, I currently play with a band called Suicidal Tendencies, and we were out with Metallica over the last 2.5 months on the M72 World Tour. We just completed the North American leg, and we will link up with them in Australia and New Zealand later on in the year. But yeah, man, to observe Metallica and be in Metallica's orbit for a little bit. I mean, growing up, that's always been, you know, one of my favorite bands, if not my absolute favorite band. Yeah. And really a special thing to have that proximity to them and kind of absorb how they work very hard at what they do. Everyone around them works very hard at what they do, and they curate a vibe and an energy around this whole tour that is so inviting, so supportive, because it is so crazy as a band that's like, nobody's used to playing on a stage like that. Right. So it's just like you're dropped into this thing. It's this like spaceship kind of looking stage. And you're like, how do we do this? How do you, logistically make this happen? How do you, like, can I hear my guitar player who's 100 meters away or whatever? Yeah. It's nuts. But what an incredible experience to be able to, get out there, do our thing for 40 minutes, and then watch Pantera and Metallica every night. Just a true masterclass in professionalism, in creating an environment where everybody's set up for success with the show that they're putting on. It really felt super special to be a part of it. I'm still kind of like putting together what the whole experience really was. I think we played like 12 or 13 shows or something on this tour. Just amazing,
What was that first show? Where was that?
That was in Syracuse.
Back in New York?
Yeah, which blew my mind, so apparently Metallica hadn't played in the Syracuse area for like quite a while, from what I understood when we played the show. And I didn't, we didn't know how many people would be there for our set. And we walk out and the place is like 70% full. And we're all just like, wow, this is like quite...
I'm from Albany, New York, and I went to school in Oneonta, which is not too far from Syracuse. So I can't picture what venue was that.
It was the stadium JMU Wireless or something like that. I forget.
There's no football stadium or anything.
No, it was on the campus of Syracuse University. Syracuse University, because there's all the orange and blue everything, so that's where we played. Cool. It was really incredible. I mean, we were also very fortunate where the first, or the night before the first night of the tour, we had a kind of load-in day to just kind of get set on this stage and like, figure out the things that you need to figure out of like, oh, we need a transmitter extension to allow us to use this entire stage and all this sort of stuff that you're just not used to, not, playing a thing of that scale. So we had a day to kind of prepare and get up to speed with all that. And then at night, my wife and I were fortunate where we got to actually watch Metallica practice and, to an empty stadium and just kind of be flies on the wall and just like observe and take that in. And it was so cool to, watch them do their thing and shrink the experience down from the, like we're talking about, like you kind of have like relativity for all these things. This show is so enormous, otherworldly. This stage literally looks like it's from a distant planet, but we were there observing, and I've had my own experiences of similar things like this, where you take something that's like totally supernatural and distill it to its basic elements, and you're like, oh, that's just four guys playing music really well.
You strip away everything, the lights and the extra effects. Guitar, drums, vocals.
And you just see, and we're just kind of there observing like, wow, there's the four guys that are Metallica. Right. And it's wild to distill all of the insanity down to the basic essence of what that is. And that helps even, somebody like myself where, I've been playing for 20 years or so and had amazing experiences that are on similar scales, not quite that big, but similar scales. Yeah. But to still be caught up in the like, I don't know, having that like that inner child in me that's like in awe of my heroes doing their thing, and to watch them work and the discipline and the professionalism is very impressive to me. And so to just be in their circle, their orbit for a couple months, and we have more to look forward to. That's been really remarkable. And like, even after 15, 20 years of some amazing experiences, it's wonderful to be able to like share in that experience where it's like, we're just passengers along for this whole thing, and to approach it from, fan first, which is how I've always kind of approach music, of just like, what's the music I want to be a part of creating that switches me on, that gets me excited. And how to, you know, we're one little drop in the bucket of a night of rock and roll for everybody that's coming out, and for a show like that in Syracuse, where it's like, oh my God, there's probably 50,000 people here right now.
Didn't know 50,000 people lived in Syracuse.
It's nuts, you know, and
They came into town.
they travel, exactly.
yeah. So to have that experience all over, and you know, we brought that to Nashville. We played at Nissan Stadium, which I lived on the east side, and I've driven past that building like I don't know how many hundreds of times over the last 10 years, and always kind of being like, man, wonder what it'd be like to play there, and I never thought I would, you know, and so to have done that was very special, and we collected a lot of special moments over the last couple months.
Yeah, man, I'm just inspired listening to this. And it's cool, like you said, because like you're obviously no stranger to touring at a grand scale like that with Slipknot and previous bands, but it's cool to hear that even still you kind of brought you back to that childlike essence and being inspired yourself.
For sure. I think, you know, I've having, you know, the experiences myself, but also, you know, taking a vested interest in the people I've met along the way and looked up to, and kind of gleaned from their knowledge and experience, is like, that's the kind of the commonality that I find none of those guys have lost. And even take, for example, like Lars on this tour, I've always gotten the sense that it's like he feels about the show he's playing tonight the same as he's felt any other show he's ever played in his entire life, going back to his adolescence. Mm-hmm. And I feel, you know, that's a common trait, I think, especially with drummers. I think in the kind of seat, the literal seat that we occupy, I think there's very much, you know, I'd venture to guess it's the same for a lot of instrumentalists, but like drummers in particular, I think there's a certain energy and intensity that we, you know, need, the physicality that we
especially
need
with
to
the
bring.
music you're playing.
Yeah, that we need to bring to this, you know, this performance that we're doing, whatever it is.
You can't just show up and clock it in as much as maybe another instrument. Not to say they are, but
yeah,
I think that's what you're saying.
Well, but I think there is a certain youthful instinct that we carry from when we first felt the impact of what we're delivering. You know, when you give a kid a drumstick for the first time, and just, you know, smacks stuff, and there's a love of that impact.
It's
and
the initial why.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it.
Yeah.
And I think it's something I've found as I've, you know, become friends with many, many drummers, is that we all retain that first whatever it was that drew us to this thing. And a lot of us can't necessarily define it, but it's the one thing that, like, it's the very crux of why that tunnel vision starts to happen, you know, an hour or two before a show, and that my heart rate starts to elevate, and you know, the things feel different around me, the air starts to change and stuff, and all those things that we're always in search of. It's like I was always feeling that way when I was 14, you know, and the pressure to perform, to deliver, and rise to an occasion. It's always been there, you know, whether that's in front of 5 people or 50,000 people. It's always kind of been there. And so to also then observe, you know, my heroes, you know, in the throes of the same emotions and performance, you know, all the things that come with that. It's very motivating and inspiring to see that. And, you know, I've been around many, many drummers, and that's always kind of felt like an unspoken thing that we all share in common. No matter what our backgrounds are, where we come from, there seems to be this like childlike instinct that I think we hope, and, you know, knock on wood, we never lose it, that we're still in touch with this like primal joy that we get from doing what we do. That evolves and takes shape and becomes different things, but I think that's a common thing that's really a treat to see in your heroes as well.
Yeah,
Yes.
couldn't agree more.
That's awesome to see in your heroes.
Hey drummers, do you need a place to practice on actual drums? Drumbox has locations in Lafayette and Longmont, Colorado, and their newest location is right here in Nashville, Tennessee. You can book sessions online and get the space to yourself. Each Drumbox location is fully equipped with 2 kits, cymbals, hardware, and even sticks are provided. 30-minute, 1-hour, and 2-hour sessions are available at www.drumbox.space. Use the coupon code ANDP25 for 25% off your first session. coupon code is valid at all 3 locations. Again, that's www.drumbox.space. It's been said that it takes a weird kind of person to want to do this thing in particular, to hit stuff and make it loud and have that be. There's a certain personality type that likes to do that. And it's where I'm like, okay, we're a little weird. We're artists, and I want to ask you about art because you're also a really fabulous visual artist. I was just checking out your paintings, and I was really fucking impressed.
Same. I was texting him earlier. I was like, I had no idea.
And
the website is freaking killer, like the immersive 4D or
Thank
3D.
you. Oh, wow. That's cool. You checked that out. Thank you.
Yeah, we went all the way in, man.
Rad. Right on. Nice.
First, I want to hear about that and your when you started drawing or painting, or what was the first thing that you approached visual art wise?
Yeah, well, I mean, I approached visual art long before I ever picked up drumsticks. You know, like that was just kind of what I was gravitating towards. I want to say probably the first time I saw a Star Wars film, like, you know, I was probably like 5 or 6 years old or something. And as many people are, we're just like totally fascinated with sci-fi stuff and envision sci-fi things. We start looking at the world around us, and you know, like
What's your favorite Star Wars?
Oh man, we could go on a couple hours about this. I'd say it used to be Return of the Jedi, and now I think it's kind of gravitated more towards The Empire Strikes Back. It's really, I mean, man, it's so difficult to pick anything. I'd actually, I mean, probably controversial, but I find myself watching Rogue One more than like original films and stuff. I find so much depth in that, and it was a really beautifully told story. Where it's gone in Andor stuff is very cool. So I look at stuff like that. Like that was a smash success in my eyes. Anyway, we'll not talk about Star Wars for a couple hours. Yeah. That'll be a different podcast. No, but so like I was switched on to stuff like that, you know, sci-fi things at an early age, and just started, you know, I'd be in the car just like looking out the window and envisioning TIE fighters and X-Wings and stuff. And I'd have a little sketchbook, and I'd be drawing primitive comics. I'd make like comic strips of, I don't know, you know, aliens invading Earth, like just like kids do. And it was also one of the hugest opportunities that I was very grateful and fortunate to have is like when I was 9 and the E Street Band got back together, I was kind of thrown into this mix of like, I didn't know what this whole scenario was. Who, like, I knew kind of who these people were because I've known them like since I was a kid, but I didn't. You know, I'm like watching my dad on this stage, and there's all these people, and he's playing these 4-hour concerts. I'm like, what is going on? Yeah. You know, it took
people that are into my dad's band.
Took me years to like kind of really put it together what that whole thing was. But you know, my parents, they wanted to expose me and my sister to the world, and my mom happened to be a history teacher, so she was able to convince our grade school, like, hey, can we bring out the kids to do this, you know, go on this tour and travel the world and stuff, and I will road school them, and you know, they'll be in school when they can, but when this tour is happening, I'm gonna be, you know, whatever. Which, like, you'd think that would be like maybe not easier, but like somewhat like a smoother whatever. Absolutely was not the case. Like, she was a drill sergeant in, like, you know, it was like 6 a.m. fucking school and tests and quizzes and the whole nine. But they balanced it out in a way that I'm very appreciative of now, where, you know, we'd do school in the morning. In the afternoon, we'd go to, you know, say we'd be in Amsterdam or something like that. We'd go to a museum. We'd go to, you know, see the Van Gogh Museum, or go see some cultural thing, Anne Frank House, something like that. Whatever city we were in, we would do that in the afternoon. And then at night, I'd go watch my dad do his thing for a couple hours and absorb that. Not like I knew what I was watching, but like that made its way into my brain somehow. And I was actually just talking about this with my wife, because we saw them just wrap up their last 2.5-year tour. They just played the last show of it in Milan the other night, and we went just to go and check it out. And they were playing some material, and I was telling my wife, who obviously didn't see me play on that tour, where I was like, this is one of the songs because I've told her the stories about how there were instances where Bruce would call out when I was filling in for my dad on a tour. He would call out songs that we hadn't rehearsed. He didn't know if I knew them, but he'd just call it out, and we're just playing it. And
that's why you play Broadway, folks.
Right.
Come on now.
So that's like there was a song, Murder Incorporated, which was like when I was a child, that was like my favorite song that I'd always watch them play. It's got a vibe. It's kind of one of the more like angrier tone kind of songs. It's got this chord progression that like is more in line with like the harder edge material that I then kind of, it's not Slayer, but it like got kind of scratched that itch as a 9-year-old. And I had never actually sat down at the drums and played Murder Incorporated. But as we're watching them play this the other night, I told my wife, I was like, that's one of the songs that it was just from when I was a kid. I watched them night in and night out. And it's like that I was drawing a lot on that muscle memory of just like watching them every night and taking it in because my brain was still developing and absorbing all this stuff. It was hugely impactful. So I didn't know that I was studying that music at that time, but it ended up being like the basis for me, 8 years later, filling in for my father. But so anyway, it's a long way of talking about how like those were my initial forays into learning about just like art and creativity and music and how they all relate to one another. And I'd always have a sketchbook with me, and I definitely have like photos that my mom would take of me or something in a museum where I'm just kind of like sat in front of a Picasso and just kind of like copying it and doing a rendition of it and just being feeling like some kind of urge to participate in creativity and not knowing where to put that, but just like, I love this thing that I'm looking at. I'm going to make my own version of it. And so I started doing that when I was, 9 years old or so. And art, like drawing and stuff was definitely my first love. From those touring experiences, I was so in awe of Bruce and his guitar playing and stuff. I think I was like too close to my dad to actually look at what he was doing and think it was cool. But I would see what Bruce was doing and it looked very cool. And so my dad for my 9th birthday got me a Telecaster. It's actually still like my primary writing guitar that I use. That's awesome. And started on guitar, didn't so much connect with it. And then, I picked up drumsticks for the first time when I was like 14, just because I had seen punk drummers that I was starting to gravitate towards, finding what was like my music that was resonating with me. But yeah, art kind of was my first love in that way. Music swung into focus, and that kind of obliterated everything. It shoved ice hockey to the side. It shoved visual art to the side. When I found drums, that was like game over. Yeah. And it wasn't anything that my dad impressed upon me or even encouraged me or even we spoke about. It was just kind of like we had a drum set in the basement, and I found myself just kind of hacking away at it one day.
It's always in the basement, isn't it?
Yeah. As you do. And I think I circled back towards, wanting to make visual art once I had started, touring a lot. And when I was in Against Me, which wasn't very long, but like the first year I was in the band, we were on tour for like 9 months, and like that was a powerhouse schedule of just like, constantly playing. It was a massive endeavor of just like, this is the first time I've played with this much frequency and this much intensity. Yeah. And man, we'd even have like the way we constructed our sets. It was like completely sadistic to ourselves because, we were invited to play the Vans Warped Tour where we only have like 40 minutes to play. And I remember we all had this discussion of like, wouldn't it be cool if the last downbeat of one song was always the first downbeat of the next song? So the entire show is just one song. Yeah. There's no speaking. There's no stopping of the music. There's it is just pure. I mean, it was a sadistic, like we are going to stranglehold the audience and not let go from the second we start till the second we finish. Yeah. And that was an idea of, okay, you can do that for 40 minutes. Yeah. Well, then we start playing hour and a half headlining shows and we take the same approach. Sure. And, you get home from a tour of doing that for, 2, 3, 4, 5 months on end. Yeah. I definitely found myself being like, okay, I am going to chill on my drums for a little bit.
I need a break.
But still also felt creatively, creative impulses and wanted to do something. And I was going to college in Hoboken, New Jersey at the time. And I went on an artist studio walk that we have them here in Nashville where I live all the time, or it's first Fridays of every month. Mm-hmm. Artists open up their studios and show their stuff, whatever.
That's really cool.
Yeah. And so I had done one of those in Hoboken and met an amazing painter named Michelle Dahl, oil painter. And at the time I would be in Brooklyn a lot, going to there was this incredible boutique art gallery store, sort of hybrid, called the Cotton Candy Machine, which is put on by these folks, amazing folks, Tara McPherson and Sean Leonard. They created a community there where I was introduced to so many artists. A guy who's tattooed half my body, Thomas Hooper, a guy who designed this right here, David Cook. Many artists I discovered through that art collective. Wow. And I just got switched on to so many visual artists that were really blowing my mind, learning about the band Converge and their singer Jake Bannon, who's an incredible visual artist who became a massive inspiration for me. I've been a big Baroness fan of John Baisley, the driving force behind Baroness and his creative artistic vision and his visual artwork. I had all these references for guys in bands who do art, and it all exists together. That's kind of what led me to be I feel these impulses and I want to learn how to do this. And so I took Michelle's information, and she was giving lessons at the time. And I was like, hey, this is kind of what I have in mind of I have art that I want to make. I just don't have the faculty to do it. I want to learn how. Yeah. I want to learn how to oil paint. It was just this medium that I felt really drawn to. And so I would go to her studio 2-3 times a week while I was doing full course loads at school. And even though when I took a pause from school to just tour the whole time, I would still come home and do painting lessons with Michelle. And it got to the point where I was kind of developing a body of work as I was taking lessons, and that actually became the basis for when it ended up being my debut art show, A Hollow Realm, which you mentioned that you checked out the virtual gallery.
That was in Los Angeles, right?
That's super cool. Yeah. That was 3 years ago now. And so that was my first foray. I never went to school for it, but found somebody who was willing to, coach me and show me the ropes of oil painting and teach me how to do it. And that set me on this path of just I felt really connected to painting like that. And it was always something that I would come back to after, a long tour. And even though I still felt creative energy flowing, but I wanted to just take a step away from the intensity of the music for a little bit, and something that strips away, the music that I play, it's so collaborative. It's so, you're not alone. And that's the purpose of it. It's to find your tribe who you're going to make this racket with. And it's very communal in that aspect. But I wanted something that was the antithesis to that. I wanted something where I can just isolate. It's very meditative for me.
Serene.
Yeah. And oil painting takes any one of those paintings is upwards of 300 hours and stuff on any one of them. Yeah. So it takes a lot of time. And I really enjoyed that. It was a balance to the chaos of touring and creating wild music and stuff. So yeah, that would become my yin to the yang of what, touring in a gnarly band where we're very committed to that experience. I wanted to come home and still feel like I was productive with my time, but I would immerse myself in that. And the beauty of the duality of all those sorts of things is that it's then I would get 300 hours of painting onto a canvas and feel pretty spent doing that and ready to go back to my drums. Yeah. And so it's often...
But also sounds like those two things also fed each other, the creative process.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Let's talk about that a little bit, because you mentioned there was a moment when you were younger when you knew the drums, okay, this is it. I'm going all in on drums. What was sort of that moment for art? What have you kind of drawn from oil? What have you brought to drumming from the oil painting and vice versa?
It's a great question. I think... like I said, the balance that it brings to life, because I just, I think we're always in pursuit of balance in some sort of way. That helped me achieve that in my own life of what on one hand is controlled chaos, but still chaos. The antithesis to that, I could immerse myself in isolation and stillness, really. So I really appreciated that. I'd say that, you know, the discipline felt very much the same, you know, very much in the way of like, you know, when you spend your thousands of hours practicing and continue to do that, it's largely the same. You know, I found a lot of commonalities with that. I found like it would maybe aid me in like creative decisions, while, you know, there was a period of a couple years between 2016 and 2019 where I was working, you know, very hard within the context of the group of working on an album, but also we weren't playing any shows. So there was kind of a vacuum of like that, you know, that whatever that thing is that we get from the live show experience. And it was all just like in isolation, whether it was making music or making art. But I feel like the patience I had with making a painting or something allowed me the patience of, you know, making a record that took 3 years to write and rearrange and edit and go through, you know, there's hundreds of versions of all these songs that ended up being this record. That taught me the patience of like the long burn of like committing to the creative process like that. Hugely beneficial in ways. You know, I think many people can relate to that, whether that, you know, they go fishing and that allows them to escape, or surfing or skateboarding or whatever. I think as creatives, I think we're always in search of, like I said, that balance, but also ways where our other pursuits can help inform in positive ways our main, call it your bread and butter, or what you do day in, day out. There are ways that just keeping in some sort of creative motion helps, you know, I'll unlock a musical challenge that I'm grappling with while I'm painting, and vice versa. Mm-hmm. I'll feel like I'll come to, you know, some kind of creative thought just because I'm zoning out and meditating and I'm thinking about like, man, what is the drum fill that's going to connect this thing? What is the, you know, whatever that I'm searching for or whatever. And I think by maintaining that creative motion in some way, I think we allow ourselves the space to kind of zero out. You ever watch that South Park documentary where they talk? Have you ever seen it? It's like the 6 days to air, where they literally come up with an idea for an episode, and 6 days later it's on TV. Right. One of the very interesting things that I think Matt Stone has that's like a kind of way of unlocking his own brain that he mentioned is like, if he's coming to a point where he can't figure out where to go creatively with a thing or whatever, he'll just hole up in his office and build Legos. And there's something in that process of like, it's creative. You're building something, but you're kind of zoning out and following instructions and, you know, okay, I put this here, I put this here. And I think by just keeping those wheels turning, you start to answer some of your own questions that are unanswerable until you are in a state where that answer just kind of comes to you. Cool. There's something to be said about, you know, the many practices. It could be cooking food. It could be whatever.
Yeah, so like a creative adjacent to maybe help you
creative
with the main
exactly.
goal, right?
Exactly.
I like
That's
that,
cool.
taking the foot, you're kind of taking the foot off the gas in a way, and that actually allows you maybe the mental space. Maybe it's the letting go of it too. Mm-hmm. It's, you know, a little bit of like, I'm not going to spend any more energy on that, and that allows your subconscious to kind of get in there and do its thing. Yeah,
and there's, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but it's always good to, have multiple tools at your disposal of like learning how to, I could remain bashing my head up against a wall, or I could like chill out and let the answer come to me. And, the exercise of patience is like, it's difficult to come by, especially in a world where, we're losing our patience more and more in an ever increasingly fast-paced world.
Just having a conversation about this very thing today.
Yeah, it's it's difficult, but probably more vital now more than ever to understand where we can just like pump the brakes and give ourselves patience and allow ourselves to maybe the answer isn't meant to come to me right now. I'm gonna do something else that feels productive with my time, and we only have such a finite amount of time. I want to do things with it. I want productivity for whatever reason, to show I did something with my time. Yeah. But I also think there's something to be said for taking a step back, and it's not a sprint. This whole thing's a marathon. Creativity is a marathon. It's a lifelong pursuit. It's okay if the answer doesn't come to you immediately.
Yeah. Right. Along those very lines, I wrote down perfectionism as you were kind of talking about that. Sort of the touring and playing a show, right? We all strive to have the perfect show, but obviously that can't always happen. And if not, you have the next show, the next night, the next tour, the next month, versus kind of the opposite end of that with a work of art. I guess kind of similar to a recording, but also to oil painting, where it's like, I guess, what are your thoughts on that perfectionism with art? What makes you decide, okay, this piece I'm okay with this being done? Do you give yourself deadlines? And how do those two things, because those are two very different mindsets, right?
Yeah, no, yeah. And it is, like I've said before, balance is a key thing, because I think all those things can be true together. I think patience can coexist with deadlines, and it's difficult, but we can do these things. For instance, I'll give you an example that I'm working with right now. My friends in a band I've met about a year ago, maybe a little over a year ago, called King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard.
Awesome.
Just an amazing band from Australia. We've become friends recently, and they asked me a couple months ago to perform at this festival that they're putting on in Colorado called Field of Vision. Which takes place next month in mid-August. And they hit me up and they were just like, hey, like, we'd love to have you play. Like, do something. And, I've done things on my own and I've been working on, especially this year, I've been working really hard on my own material that I've been working on for decade plus, and finally kind of convinced myself in sort of a pseudo New Year's resolution to myself of like, I'm going to do something with this because it's time, and I'm happy with the development, and I'm getting to the point where I got to do something with this. But that being said, like, I've done my solo drum clinics, like I'll do at the Music City Drum Show, like you mentioned, but that's not appropriate for like this environment. It's not, I'm not just going to get up at a festival where there's more of a vibe of the creation and collaboration, and it's not so much I'm just gonna get up on stage and do my clinic thing. It's different than that. And I was kind of half like hoping that they'd forget they'd asked, but they didn't, and they followed up and they were like, we're announcing it, we got to announce you, and like, what are you gonna do? And I'm like, oh boy, okay, well, I was like, how about this? I was like, I have a friend in town, going back to the communal aspect of being in Nashville, a Nashville musician, and kind of like fitting in the back door of that, where it's like, okay, now now I'm collaborating with like my fellow Nashvillians and stuff. I have a good friend named Connor, who's a noise kind of modular synth project called Argus. He and I have always talked about wanting to collaborate in some sense. And so I was like, how about this? I've got a friend who does like noise machine stuff. I'll be on drums. We're going to collaborate. We're going to take some of his material, some of my material that I've been working on and that I'm getting ready to finally get out into the world, and we'll do something based on that. And they're like, great. Okay, that sounds good to us. I'm like, okay. So then I call up my friend Connor. I'm like, okay, Connor, we're going to start a band. We're going to come up with a show, and we're going to play at King Gizzard's Field of Vision in like a month and a half. Hope that's cool with you. And he's just like me. He's just like, dude, I'm down. We got to do this. That's and sick. So I think that's kind of, the opposite of just like letting things come to you. It's like, well, this opportunity came to me, and there's nothing like a deadline to really light a fire under your ass. Right. So I think those things can coexist. It certainly will have to for this, but yeah, and I think I've also taken that, on my own side of the street with this, material that I've been working on. Like I said, like I started on guitar, and that's always kind of been my primary writing instrument. And I have all this material that I'm kind of like, if this song would be amazing with my friend X on vocals. And so I hit up friend X. I'm like, hey, we've always wanted to do something creative together. Here's a song. Would you want to sing on this? And so I've amassed a bunch of material that is that. And not necessarily knowing what that's going to be, if that's going to be a band or if it's going to be something I play at drum clinics and stuff. I think it'll be something that I bring out for the Music City Drum Show and definitely at Field of Vision now.
But but they're ideas and you like them.
Yeah, and the pursuit of that is exciting. It's something different. It's something new. It touches on many inspirations that I haven't really ever gotten to dive into because I'm kind of yes, I wear the drummer's hat, but I also take that off and I put on the guitar player's hat and the bass player's hat and all this sort of stuff, and being a producing role in it. So it's much more of a comprehensive way of doing stuff that I'm really excited about. And having the opportunity where my friends come to me to challenge me to do something, and I want to rise to that, then that kind of kicks me in the ass of like, hey, well, okay, now it's time to really get this stuff, into shape. So these things are in various states of completion. Some are in the mixing phase right now that I'm hoping to at least get out by the end of the year, if not sooner than that. And yeah, but that's where all these things kind of, the fluidity of like trying to catch inspiration and balance that with patience, yet stick to a deadline, because I think many of us get in the creative hustle where, we end up pet sounding the whole thing, and it's going to take, or, we end up being Chinese democracy, and we're working on it. It's never done. We're always going to make it that 0.5% better. Yeah. And that was actually, this fucking South Park documentary is so true. Where
I need to watch that damn thing.
You do, you do.
I'm a huge South Park
So
fan.
there's one quote that's always really stuck to me where one of the guys says, I could spend X amount of time making this 5% better, or I could get it out into the world and then I can't even do anything about it, and now I have to move on to the next thing. Right. There is something to be said about like, I feel like creativity and being a musician, we kind of build these like sandboxes around ourselves to play in, and that's fun to have some kind of parameters for a creative project, in that there are no rules, but we can be like, I want to operate within this. It's the framework of an EP or a record, or boil it down to one song. And you have to have a wherewithal and an understanding of when the thing needs to be like taken away from you. Yeah. And sometimes you need to be like your own parent taking the toy away from you and being like, you're done with this. It's done. Yeah. You can be done with this and move on,
What would you say then to the person who has projects like that, and they are in that kind of perfectionist zone where, you know what, it's not quite right. I really like it. But I just don't think it's perfect. I feel like it needs something, and they've been sitting on these things for years. What advice would you give them?
Well, I got turned on to an album by a band called Burnt by the Sun, called "Perfect is the Enemy of the Good." I think that's the name of the record, and that always kind of stuck with me in the sense that like the strive for perfection, and now so more than ever, it's really kind of difficult. Like perfect is often impressive, but it doesn't necessarily have the capability to move someone. There's a lot to be said for the character of the sort of wavy line, the sort of, rough around the edges. That's always been the music that's affected me the most, is the stuff that comes from the heart and less from the, I'm going to make this completely beat detectived and sound replaced and whatever. Like, that's not what's always moved me about music. If that moves somebody, that's completely, a valid thing. But for myself, as I've looked at like perfection, it's like, that's not the end goal. The end goal is to be moved by art, and moved by music. Yeah. And I think that's not to say we don't strive for all, as the Descendants put it, and strive for something to be great and put considerable effort into it. Yeah. I think, when you run into the modern constructs and the modern pitfalls of chasing perfectionism, because it's so easy nowadays. Like, it's so easy to consider something like it is perfect. And I don't know, a case, art is art, music is music. If you, one person's creative path, it's not for me to judge if that's the right or wrong way. There are no right or wrong ways. Yeah. But for someone's peace of mind who's agonizing over perfection and stuff, it's like, I think it's always good to just kind of check in with yourself about what your goals are with this thing that you're trying to create. Because oftentimes we try to, a friend of mine who's referenced this book that has a great line of like, perfectionism is often the pursuit of trying to take yourself out of the art that you're making. Whoa. Because it's, because when we make art, when we make music, it's a vulnerable experience. You're putting yourself out there to be judged, to be critiqued, to be observed. And in the world that we live in, artists are critiqued more than they ever have been, which is just the nature of the modern world. But I think to strive for that perfectionism is sometimes maybe it can be a, subconscious effort of like, no, I don't want you to see the imperfections. I don't want you to see me because that's scary and that's vulnerable. So I'm going to make this thing not me. Yeah. Well, then you've taken out the very thing that was special about this. So, again, that's not to justify or try to half-ass things. I'm a steadfast believer in like, if there's something worth doing, it's worth doing well. It's worth doing with intent and the pursuit of something that you didn't even realize you were able to accomplish yourself. But that's not to then be like, I'm going to take myself out of this, because that can be a hard thing. But that's our responsibility as artists, is to show the truth, is to tell the truth. And so that's kind of, my thoughts on that, I guess.
That was poetry. Thank you.
How do you get the perfect Nashville kick drum tone? It starts with a lowboy leather daddy bass drum beater. This leather-faced beater occupies the sonic space between felt and wood beaters. It's punchy enough to cut through the mix on those 4-on-the-floor barn burners with the warmth you need for slow ballads. Okay, but who plays a leather daddy? Garrett Goodwin from Carrie Underwood's band uses one. Lee Bryce drummer Donnie Marple plays a pair. Walk down Broadway any night of the week and you're going to hear one. In Nashville, you can test drive a lowboy beater at Drumbox and grab one at Forks, Drum Supply, or Nelson's. Check out lowboybeaters.com to learn more.
And we're back.
All right.
That was our kombucha sponsorship break, sponsored by Walker Brothers.
All right.
Pick some up at your local trim truck or Kroger, or wherever you buy kombucha. Blueberry jasmine. What are you drinking? Citrus.
Actually, I was drinking citrus. I'm actually drinking a little bit of that in that.
Okay, nice.
Got some chemistry experiments.
Exactly.
So where were we? Kind of talking about oil painting, perfectionism. I was going to bring up sort of a natural transition into, because you've had some really unique, cool collaborations with drum brands and products, and even DAW software plugins. And what kind of happened first? The SJC kit, right?
Yes.
From the oil paintings, kind of?
Well, yeah. I mean, it all sorts of kind of blur into one big thing for me. But, well, let's see. I mean, naturally, I think, as someone, when you start touring, you just start to sort of like accumulate gear just out of like necessity, right? And finding out what my preferences are, what I like about certain drums, what I don't like about certain drums. I've been playing SJC custom drums since 2009. So that's 16 years now. And it was out of the interest of just like, I wanted to grow with a company I felt was very promising, and I felt understood what I wanted to do as a drummer, as an artist, because I felt like they were on the cutting edge of viewing drums as art projects that were more than just the shells and the hardware, and it was something more than that. Sure. In the custom aspect of things, where I just saw what they had done. My buddy, honestly, like the first drummer I had watched who made me realize oh my God, this is what I want to do. His name's Brandon Steinecker. He was the founding member of a band called The Used. And he's since 2006, he's been in the band Rancid. And he, back in 2009, I think, 8 maybe, he had SJC create a drum set based on the TV show Dexter. So you should check it. I'll send you the photo of it. It's wild, where they made the owner of the company, Mike, who's like a brother to me. We've done everything together. He hadn't seen the TV show, but met Brandon, and Brandon wanted to do this kit. I think it'd be cool to do an acrylic kit where, it's like Dexter wraps his victims that he kills in saran wrap, and there's these blood slides that he keeps as trophies of blah, blah, blah. And so Mike had never seen the show, but he went on a binge and watched it all in one night or something, and was like, I have the idea for the drum set. And so he made these blood slide badges, and the acrylic kind of had this ripple effect, it was saran wrap, he wrapped his victims in and stuff. Went totally wild with the creative aspect of these drums. And I saw it and I was just like, what is that drum set? I've never seen anything like it. And he was like, I can get you on the phone with the owner right now. And I was like, please, yeah, I'd love to. And at that time, I was still in Madball and didn't really have like an endorsement necessarily, but started speaking to Mike about like ideas and stuff, and he ran wild with stuff, and I'm just like, wow, this is kind of like my creative kin, like he has the same spirit of what he wants to do with his company as I do with what I want to do with my drumming. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, cool. Like, let's do some stuff. And so we would then embark on making a drum set. And it was a couple years later that when I got asked to join Slipknot, where I couldn't tell my friend Mike, who, we've been working together a couple years at that point, I couldn't tell him what I was up to. And I was like, look, here's the deal. I can't tell you what I'm doing, but I need to ask you if it's possible to get 2 giant double bass drum sets made. I can't afford it. I don't have any way to pay for it, but I will promise you I will make this up to you. I'll make this worth your while, because I don't want to go to another company. I don't want to play other drums. I love what we do. And if you're down, and I'm like, if you're down to embark on this with me, I want to go on this journey with you. And he was like, whatever this is, I'm down, man.
Oh
okay, so that begins, our conversation of like amassing gear, and then taking all these things a step beyond what we'd done, the time before. Like, we're always, as soon as Mike and I accomplish something and release it into the world or whatever, we're always like, okay, so what's the next thing? Like, we're just constantly moving in that way. So one of probably the first forays into it, which is still one of my favorite drum kits I've ever had, was a collaboration where I wanted to make a drum set that appeared similar to the drum set I had used to make the album I was talking about earlier called We Are Not Your Kind. Mm-hmm. It was a hodgepodge drum set. It was like a blonde Gretsch right kick, a red like Ludwig left kick. The toms happened to be the old Gretches that were used on the Black album that I had actually used on the preceding Slipknot record. But it was all kind of mismatched. I wanted a kit that was totally mismatched like that, and looked similar to what I had used in the studio to kind of evoke the thing that I was getting out on that record. And I collaborated with my friend Thomas Hooper, this amazing tattoo artist who's covered my body in his artwork. So it's all like Thomas's artwork, and we collaborated on that. That was amazing. But then we decided, like, you know what, let's do a kit. First, we actually endeavored to do a snare drum that Mike had developed for me based on like the late 90s, early 2000s, very thick shell, high-tuned, high-intensity snare drums that we'd always loved. Adrian Young, Travis Barker, Chris Hornbrook, those kinds of drummers who I was like, I grew up as a fan of, and wanted to hear that in what I was playing. And using metal snares, using acrylic snares wasn't so much getting that for me. So he's like, well, here's this 48 ply monstrosity that I've made for you.
48 ply.
With two 2-inch rings, or vents rather. And he's like, give this a shot. Maybe this is up your alley, for the quickness of blast beats and that very responsive, like I can just float on that thing. And it's like the most, it feels like, cutting butter with a hot knife. It's just, it's so enjoyable to play that snare drum. Yeah, great rebound and quickness. So we sort of like, well, if there's a opportunity to do like an artist series or a signature snare drum, let's do it with this. And we didn't want to pull any punches of like have it not made by the American shop. We wanted it to be made where, like, I wanted it to be exactly what I would go up on. If I'm offering this as something for people to play, because people have asked me like, what's your snare? I want to use the snare that you use. Yeah. I don't want to give something that's not that, And so we came up with this idea of like, let's do your own artwork on this snare, and this will be your signature snare. So we did that.
So cool.
And we didn't know how it was going to do, especially because it's a lot to ask of your audience of like, hey, this thing is it's 48 plies of maple and it's made in our US shop. It is expensive, but luckily, you know, we got a great response with it. And I think, you know, I've met many people who've welcomed that beast of a snare drum into their home and they enjoy it just like I do. And that's a pleasure to share that with drummers all over. I meet drummers who have this snare drum.
So cool. Has that turned into kind of like a mini cult?
Yeah.
Of just like, wow, okay, what is that like for you?
Well,
for someone to be like, you bought my
as the cult leader.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
You know, it's, well, I view it more so as, you know, it is, it's a cult of, I suppose, people who are obsessed with a certain sound and energy of what they're trying to get out in their music. And if there's any way that I can be helpful in designing an instrument that allows people to unlock what they're hearing in their heads, and then that's great. You know, these are all just tools. You know, no snare drum is going to make you a better drummer. That's all on you. It's about just using it as a tool at your disposal. What we did, because I find, and I meet SJC drummers all over the world, I always feel like I have something in connection with them. It's like, oh, you were emailing with Zach last week? I was emailing with Zach last week, you know, and stuff like that. Like, it's a very tight-knit little family that we have.
It's kind of like maybe, sorry to interrupt, but just seeing like someone on the streets wearing like a band t-shirt from like a certain era, like a niche. I was like, oh, you're into that band? Like we're probably going to go along. Yeah. I know a lot about you.
So I feel very much when I, you know, play festivals all around and see an SJC drummer, we have this like commonality. Yeah. And so Mike and I thought it would be a great idea with this, you know, this massive investment that folks are putting into this snare drum. I want to thank them face to face. Yeah. And we released it around the time of COVID, where not much face to face interaction is happening, but we're doing a lot of Zoom meetings and stuff. And I'm like, can we do this where I, like, in the package of the thing, you can just get a QR code and you can just scan that, and we're in a Zoom teleconference
the Zoom invite,
together. And we can talk about this. Like, hey, you just got this snare drum. Do you love it? I love it. Like, you know, let's talk about that. And you know, let's talk about your band. Let's talk about what you're doing. And it's been awesome, man. Like I've had countless conversations with people I might not have met otherwise, but now we get to relate on this, and we share this like special bond through my buddy and I designed this snare drum, and now you've invested in it and welcomed it into your home to make your own music with it. I hope you enjoy it, and let's talk about it.
Yeah, so that's such a special connection.
Yeah, so we took that one step further, and you know, when we found success with that snare drum, we designed a different one that was like a different energy. We called it the Crucible. It's metal. It's a copper shell, and I really like that. It's got a different character than the 48 ply, but both kind of coexist in my arsenal depending on what project I'm kind of working on. Then we took that another step further, and we're like, okay, well, the next step is doing a full drum set. And so what do we do with that? So I told Mike, I was like, okay, I'm going to make all this artwork for you know, to do another mismatched kit. So you can just go crazy and make this thing look nuts. As I was like, okay, here's what I want for my kick, my right kick, my left kick, these toms, and you know, do additional artwork for the snares. So now it's like different pieces of art for the snare. Yeah. But I was like, and tell me if this is too crazy, but I was like, let's give anybody the opportunity for any one piece of this artwork. If you didn't want the yellow piece of artwork, like I have it on my kick drum, you want that for your third rack tom, you could do that. You could permutate all these things. So I ended up making like hundreds of art files for all this stuff to fit each shell. So every configuration, no matter what, it's like you're probably never going to have two people getting the same drum set. They're all sort of different.
That's even cooler. Yeah.
So we embarked on that and we did it.
Man, quick shout out to Mike at SJC. And he's been a big supporter of our show. In past episodes, and still that takes a special company and people, a family company, right, to be able to say yes to those requests.
And it's no knock, and it's no knock to any other company or drum manufacturer, but it's like, who does that? You know,
most would have stopped at 48 plies.
Let
alone art, and then having that being configurable and like, that's just so cool.
And so we figured out how to make it so it's like, you know, it's a lot to ask of people for a full, you know, 2 bass drums and 3 rack toms and 2 floor toms. So we're like, okay, let's break it up into different add-on packages where you can have a baseline drum set and add-on things, because not many people have the space in their house to have a giant drum set like that. But again, it was like, I want to show people put the effort into designing something that it's like I would go up on stage and play that if it came down to it. And actually, I did a performance, this amazing drum show in France called the Bag Show, La Baguetteries, the group that puts it on. And I was aware it was going to get filmed and stuff. And so Mike and I asked Mike, I was like, can we make one of these signature kits for me to use at this drum clinic? I want to demonstrate this kit in all of its glory, the thing that we've developed. It's not mine that I designed like to spec or whatever. This is the retail version. And I was just as pleased playing on that as I was the kit that I had, custom designed with the, original artwork. Yeah. And that was a really, gratifying feeling that it's like, I felt just as comfortable on that kit as I would the one that I've been touring on for, a year or two or whatever. Yeah. That was amazing to do that. And I've gotten the feedback from folks who have gotten those drum sets and that they feel, the same way. And I feel just some sort of kinship that it's like people who've been very kind to have an open ear into the creative things that I've been a part of, that they feel like some sort of relationship with that they're willing to be like, I'm in search of that sort of sound, or maybe those are tools that can help me achieve my sort of sound. So that's like a huge honor in and of itself. Then we take that further, and I was approached by the amazing company Mixwave, who they had only done 2 drum virtual instruments. They've done some guitar things and other plugins for people's recording software, but they did one with 2 of my heroes, Thomas Pridgeon and Mario Duplantier. Mm-hmm. Good friends of mine who, and I'd been approached in some other instances of doing sample libraries and capturing my sound, but nothing so much kind of spoke to the creative spirit that I necessarily saw, great companies in their own right, but I didn't so much see them for myself. But once Mixwave approached me, and I know Thomas and I know Mario, and I know how diligent those guys are about their craft, I was like, these guys get it. And these guys will understand the lengths that I'm going to want to go to make this like a behemoth of a virtual drum set. So it was actually the very first thing I did with that kit that I did all the artwork for and stuff. Actually, the first time I'd ever even seen it before I brought it out on tour was at this session to record it. Yeah. And I was so pleased with the way it was constructed. They sounded awesome. They looked great. Yeah. And that was the basis for my Mixwave sound library, virtual instrument, where it's every sample performed by me. It's basically the longest line check of my life, where you're, capturing the very faintest hit to the absolute hardest I can hit a drum. Right. And I told the guys who were recording it, because they were like, okay, what's your vision? It's a complete blank canvas for you. And I told them, I was like, I want this whole drum set. I'm going to bring like 9 snare drums. I want to do versions of the kit, because I've a lot of my when you're in a band where your members are kind of scattered, you do a lot of writing from home and sending each other files and stuff. And truth be told, as I've been working on my own stuff, I've been demoing with my own sounds from this library, because it's the way I wanted.
It's you.
Yeah, it's me. It's all my own recording. And and I actually even thought of when Mixwave approached me, I was like, this is actually really good timing. Even though I hadn't really spoken about it publicly, I was like, I know that I'm about to enter a phase of my life where I'm not going to be able to play the drums for like, I've been told, like 5 or 6 months with my injury, with my hip injury. When I have this surgery, I'm not going to be able to play the way that I'm used to, but I still want to remain creative and demo stuff and whatever with my own sound. So this was going to be a tool that would allow me to, work with MIDI and work in my Pro Tools kind of stuff and just kind of demo out things like that, bedroom style. Mm-hmm. But no, and I had experience with other libraries before, and I'm like, oh, I wish I could, manipulate this or whatever. I wish I could opt between the felt side of the beater or the plastic side of the beater, or whatever, like all those sorts of things. And as it came to the user interface, they're like, you could do whatever you want. I was like, can I put my dog in it? And they're like, yeah, you can put your dog in it. I was like, can my dog be a playable instrument in it? So I put my phone out on the table when my dog's like taking a nap, and I'd like knock on the table and she'd think it's somebody, she'd bark and whatever. Yeah. And I record all that, and I sent all those files of like my dog barking to the Mixwave people. I was like, can you make that like velocity wise, like quiet barks to loud barks, and they were like, yes, we can do that. So it was just all these things to just like make it my own and you know, give it a little bit of a window into not just my drumming but my life, and because people are aware of my dogs because I post about them on Instagram and stuff.
It's a part of your lore.
Yeah, it's the lore. It's lore building. We're world building here,
and cult building too.
Yeah. So you know, all the companies that I've been so fortunate to work with, and that then extends itself to like with Zildjian, we had been talking about making a symbol for a bell. They had made me a bell back in 2015, and it was like my favorite thing ever. It captured the exact vibe that I like. I didn't want something so much in the world of the Zill bell, but I wanted something that kind of had that character, but a little rougher around the edges, a little dirtier. And so they came up with something, and I had actually broken it. I played it so much that it chipped, and it sounded incredible with the break. Yeah. There was one show that we played where we played the entire album Iowa, the band's second record. And there's a song that just starts out with the bell, and it's just hammering on this bell, and this bell was broken. And it was just like the most, I just lost myself in the tone of this thing. It sounded so good, and then I lost it somehow. Yeah. And I was brokenhearted, and I kept asking him. I was like, hey, is there any way I could get another one of those bells? And
let me break it.
The work order, the work order form had been lost. No one knew how to make this thing again. Yeah. And it was like, oh well. And then it was just something that was kind of lost to whatever. But then thankfully about maybe a year ago, about a year ago, Zildjian was really kind in reaching out and being like, hey, we found the work order form for that bell that you've been talking about for the last 10 years. Because I would always check in with them, like working on a new record. Like, hey, is there any way to make another bell like that? Like, I got a song that I'd love to do that. And we'd make some stuff, but it wouldn't get to where I wanted that. But finally, they cracked the code because they found the original work order form and I guess the special sauce they used to make that symbol. And they were like, okay, so we want to do this concept series where we'll put this symbol out. It'll be your kind of like signature bell. Yeah. And so I was very grateful for the opportunity. And so all these things like, the SJC Drums, the Mixwave thing, the Zildjian bell, it's like I've been very, very fortunate with these companies that have supported me for going on 20 years now. Mm-hmm. And having some sort of little drop in the bucket of like, this is the way I view drums and cymbals. And hopefully some people connect with that. And but it's always just been an endeavor of like, how much of my own personality can I insert into this creative task? And turns out there are many, many possibilities for that.
You've heard of Drum Supply, but you gotta see their shop. It's a drum shop experience like no other. They're packed with all the gear a working drummer needs, and so many parts, noise toys, and accessories. It's a toy store. Curated cymbals, kits, and snares. The hands-on percussion room is nuts, and their custom shop work is fast and affordable. Andy and the guys know their stuff, and they're ready to help. And the big news? They've just moved to an awesome new location near the corner of East Trinity Lane and Dickerson Pike. Still in East Nashville, just a couple miles from their old spot, the all-new Drum Supply is twice as big, featuring a dedicated cymbal room, a lesson space, and even more drum gear than ever. Go see the new Drum Supply shop for yourself. Now open 11 to 5 at 2211 Dickerson Pike and online at drumsupply.com.
I love that.
So cool.
I'm a big fan of that. I think that's what that leaves. First of all, it's more personal, and it's something that if you care about sharing a piece of yourself, which is kind of what I guess what being an artist is, then it would be only natural that you would want to do that. I'm like, well, why don't I? Well, I just love the idea of that you put your dog.
Yeah, well, and we got another dog since then, so I have to do a product update with my new dog too.
Probably goes.
And like I said, anything worth doing is worth doing to the absolute maximum capacity that you can. Why pull any punches when it comes to this stuff? It's so hard nowadays to cut through any of the noise. So if there's some way where you can connect to people on a real level of like sharing your life through your art, through your creative pursuits, like that's a good thing, to do with your time.
I agree.
Love that. Yeah. I want to go on a quick tangent, if you don't mind.
Yeah,
I'm
please.
reading here from your bio. In 2018, you began working with the Best Buddies of Tennessee, a nonprofit dedicated to establishing a global volunteer movement that creates opportunities for one-to-one friendships, integrated employment, and leadership development for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities.
It's very well said.
Very cool. Yeah. Well, reading off your bio, so well written now.
Oh, okay. Well, the Best Buddies organization is fantastic. I think that stems from, like we've been talking about, wanting to be involved in the community and being a hockey fan. I got turned on to the philanthropic efforts of, my new favorite hockey team, the Nashville Predators, who I had some proximity to when I, moved to town and have only gotten closer to over the years. And they would do these events, and they'd get people out from the community, people who do stuff, musicians and whatnot. You see Dierks Bentley doing stuff with the team all the time. In fact, actually, Dierks has a team in our league with the Hellhounds and stuff. Yeah. So, so there are many ways that these things kind of cross over into one another. Yeah. And I remember going to a benefit kind of like gala dinner sort of thing that the Preds were putting on in support of Best Buddies, and I was kind of like, what is that? And my hockey heroes were here, kind of demonstrating what they do in the community. Pekka Rinne, the goaltender for the Nashville Predators for the longest time, his entire career was in Nashville. I would see him very active with Best Buddies, and Roman Josi, the captain of the team. And so I ended up reaching out to Best Buddies, and I was just like, hey, I was at this event. It was really great, and I was very inspired by the stories of, these amazing young people, because the ages range from like being children to young adults, all who have intellectual and developmental disabilities, autism, Down syndrome, stuff like that. And I was like, the stories were very inspiring of them finding connection and purpose, and especially, Best Buddies, the organization, which is all over the world. It's not just in Nashville, but has a great Nashville presence. Doing stuff that gives them employment opportunities and sets them up for, a successful life in that way. And I thought it was just really cool. And I was like, look, I'm a musician in town. I'd love to, I don't know if I could come and give drum lessons or something, but I'd love to participate in this because it really moved me going to this this event. And they told me, they were like, well, we actually have this endeavor coming up called the Champion of the Year. Not like program, but it was like a challenge. And basically they're like, what we would do is find you a best buddy, find you an individual who might have autism or Down syndrome, who, your interests might line up, and we'll pair you, and the two of you together will go on, the endeavor of trying to, fundraise to help support this chapter of Best Buddies. They're like, would you want to be a part of that? I was like, absolutely. And then actually going back to what we were talking about at the beginning, I met my wife the day I had actually been paired with my best buddy, Daniel. Is this amazing young man, drummer, bass player, we love the same music. We got along with all that. And so I met Daniel, and actually I was asked by Ray and his wife to do a piece of art for his wife's nonprofit, and my wife happened to be, or my future wife ended up, she was directing that video shoot of me making this piece of art that they wanted to time lapse and stuff, and she was working on the crew doing this shoot. So all these things coming into one thing is wild. It was like one of the best weeks of my life. I got paired with Daniel, and we started putting together okay, so what do we do with trying to do a fundraiser? I'm like, well, what would you think about putting on a benefit concert? Would you want to play with me, and we could get friends, and we, do cover songs and stuff like that, stuff that's very common in Nashville, a covers night at Basement East or Exit In or The End or whatever. Let's put on a show. And so utilizing the contacts that I've made, and not utilizing, but just reaching out to people who are friends. I'm like, hey, this is my idea. Is there any way we could get your support in helping put on this event? And Basement East, absolutely. I'm like, okay, so it was one of those felt like Wayne stock, it's like, okay, I've booked the show. I got to figure out what this is going to be. Yeah. Who's going to help me with this? Because I can't just be up there on the drums alone. Yeah. I could, but I don't know who would come. So so I end up, I'm calling friends. I'm like, hey, this is what I'm up to. This is the mission statement of this organization. It's something I believe in. Would you be down to help? Would you want to come to town and rip a gig with me and do some cover songs? And, you go down the line, Ben Wyman, who's my bandmate in Suicidal Tendencies now, Troy Sanders from Mastodon, Jack Gibson from Exodus. The list goes on and on. I had so many, Alicia from Bully. So many people made the time to come even from out of town, far out of town, came to take part of this. And we called the event Buddies on the Beat. And it was so cool. We had a month or two to promote the event and just kind of get out there. Here's the people involved, and it's just going to be music that we all know, and all these people playing together for the first time. It's going to be wild. Let's just have fun with this. And it was awesome. The Predators got involved. We had some of their players play in the show.
No way.
It was so nuts. My buddy Daniel got up on stage, played bass for. I want to say we did a Nirvana song together. And he had just the time of
Daniel
his life.
was the kid, right?
Okay. Yeah. Daniel was my buddy, and it was a remarkable event, and we raised a lot of money for a great cause. It's actually something I'd really like to do again, and I've remarked on it every time I go to a show at Basement East. They were so kind. They've actually put there's a whole collage of show posters on one of the walls at Basement East, and our show poster is up there.
Cool. Yeah.
It was an amazing experience.
Look out for that next time.
Yeah. So hopefully someday we'll do Buddies on the Beat Part 2.
Yeah.
Because it's an amazing organization. The people who it benefits are just they have amazing stories. They persevere through so much. Living with stuff that is a little bit largely misunderstood and hard to. Autism is difficult to see. It's difficult to define in certain ways. It is the spectrum that you come to kind of understand as you get to know these amazing folks. And so, whatever I could do I had the time and wanted to benefit in some way. So to do that from the Nashville chapter was really, really exciting. It was a career highlight, I'd say.
That's so cool. Again, it comes back to you being an active participant,
It's all about that.
Kind of seems the theme of your journey.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
And also community, because, it goes without saying, but you could be a kick-ass drummer and go on tour and live in Nashville and not do any of that and not care about people and not try to give back. But you obviously do care, and that's pretty special.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure many people appreciate the work you're doing. So
right on.
That's awesome.
This episode is brought to you by SJC Drums, the custom drum company trusted by some of the biggest names in music. Whether you're smashing stages or just jamming in the garage, SJC builds drums that are as unique as your playing style. We're talking 25 years of handcrafted, made in the USA drums with killer tone, crazy attention to detail, and designs that turn heads. You've seen them on tour with bands like 21 Pilots, A Day to Remember, Sum 41, Knocked Loose, Rancid, and more. Now it's your turn. Hit up sjcdrums.com to start building your dream kit, or check out their ready-to-ship snares and accessories. That's sjcdrums.com. Built with passion, played with purpose.
Did you have a direction you wanted?
No,
to...
I was going to ask you if you had something you wanted to ask, or you wanted.
I mean, there's so much we could probably still talk about.
Oh, we got lots. We got clinics coming up.
Yeah.
We got
clinics.
other.
We haven't even touched Slipknot at all. If you want to go there,
whatever you guys like.
I mean, I'm seeing some of these recent accolades. Maybe briefly touch upon some of those. I mean, number one rock drummer, modern drummer, 2017, 2020, 2022, 2023. Metal drummer of the year. Yeah, you're like struggling. Yeah. Metal drummer of the year, drum recording of the year in 2021, 2022 Drumeo Awards. What do those accolades mean to you?
I'm very appreciative of that. I think any one of those things could go to any number of drummers that put all of themselves into what they do. I'm very grateful to have been a part of things I suppose that are seen with that kind of merit. It's not anything that's within my control. It's not the end goal of being a creative person. I don't view music in a competitive way like that. I think it's it's nice to receive recognition for efforts, but it's never been the reason I get out of bed to make music or make art. But with that said, for groups or organizations that view whatever music I've made or have been a part of making that merits any kind of a recognition like that is flattering for sure.
Yeah. Is there one that stands out to you, as maybe even like as a child, to think like, oh, one day I want to be on cover of Modern Drummer? Or,
no, I mean, I'm very appreciative of Modern Drummer and Modern Drummer's support of myself over the years. But no, I don't think. I mean, truthfully, like growing up, I never thought I'd be on the cover of any magazine like that. So for any of that to have happened is certainly a nice thing to happen, and I'm grateful for the support. But no, it was never something that was like an aspiration or a goal. But certainly, nice to at times dip into that over the course of my career.
For sure. Yeah.
Well, you do have a clinic coming up.
That's right.
Music City Drum Show, which we just love being a part of. It's such a blast every year. I'm excited to watch your clinic.
Oh, thank you.
What should I expect at a Jay clinic?
Well, I've been doing clinics for a number of years, and they've always kind of evolved. And Mike from SJC and I have, he's been like my partner in all those. There was some of the first ones that we did. We did three clinics in 3 days in Tokyo, which was like a whole otherworldly experience. We fly over to Tokyo, no sleep, and now we do like 3 clinics, and we're not sleeping between any of them, and it's such a gnarly endeavor. Yeah. But we had a great time doing it. I'm sure. They ended up being like little mini shows, because I feel like the only way to approach a clinic or a solo performance as it is to do it with some kind of authenticity and not really try to fake something that it's not my vibe, it's not my thing, but doing my thing and displaying perhaps my, enthusiasm and intensity for the music that I love to make. That's what I can kind of get across. And it's a little bit of a, I kind of take the experience of what I would do in a concert or a show or whatever and shrink that down to be like, I want to be right next to you, right in front of you, doing it. And so you allow for a greater proximity to it. There's a certain intensity with that. Yeah. When you strip away the cloak of bandmates and volume and stuff, and it's just me up there, there's a certain kind of exposure that's exciting about it. But yet still just kind of doing my thing, whatever that is. I don't really know how to define that. But when the opportunity to play the Bag Show in Paris last year presented itself, because I was kind of like, I don't know, like there wasn't anything concrete that I was ready. I've been working on my own, this material that I'm not quite ready to share just yet. I'm not really sure what that's going to be. And my friend who helps me, book such events was like, I told them you'd do it. So just go ahead and just figure it out and do it. I was like, oh, okay. And I'm very glad for that, because I would have talked myself out of like, I don't know what I would do just yet. I just recovered from this surgery and such, but I'm like, well, the opportunity is there, the invitation is there. I don't want to be ungrateful, is not the right word, but like I want to show my gratitude for the opportunity and do it well. So I viewed that as kind of a challenge of like, well, I don't have necessarily an active, this is my newest kind of body of work. This is what I want to be, this is what best represents me right now. But I was like, this could be an interesting opportunity, because I get asked a lot, how does one go from the experience of playing with Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band to, all the many things that have taken place, and now playing with Suicidal Tendencies, many things in between, Kvelertak, Slipknot, Against Me, whatever, like all these things that I've done over the last 15, almost 20 years. I viewed it as a kind of way, because it is at times confusing, like how do you get from this to that, because it's so drastically different. Right. Yeah.
Seem like totally disparate worlds.
But to me, it all feels like it's coming from the same place internally. I can't really discern too much the energy I inject in, from playing a Bruce song to playing a Slipknot song that I co-created. There are, it all comes from the same place within me. So with that in mind, it's a way for me to take a little, a clinic setting like this is a way for me to kind of show a little bit a rare look in the rearview mirror of the last 15 years and be like, this is how I see all this stuff. And you can kind of understand all these different projects as now they'll all happen in front of you kind of all at the same time. This is how I view all of it, and the energy that at least I can bring into each thing and try to give my creative contribution to it. That's kind of how I look at it. But now, as I've had the time, especially over the last year, working on things that do indicate to my future, if it's even, you know, like say this, you know, we'll call it a quote solo EP or record or something, even though it's far from solo, it's all collaborative in nature.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that becomes a band or something. I'm still in the throes of the creation of it. I view this as an opportunity to kind of show like, this is where I've been, this is where I am, this is a way that I'm going. But I find the clinic situation is a really nice, concise way of like displaying all that stuff. And yeah, so it's you know, I'll be covering material. And I enjoy the, you know, not necessarily like the classroom kind of setting of it, but it is more of an educational kind of back and forth rather than, you know, just a performance, which is just all forth and you just have to, you know, endure that. There is a little bit of more communicativeness that I really like with the clinic setting. So it is a way for me to, you know, if people are familiar with my work from any number of the projects that I've been a part of over the last 15 years, it's a way for me to kind of demonstrate where those things have come from and where that all informs like where I'm at and where I'm going. So to have the opportunity to come to the Music City Drum Show is like an amazing opportunity because also I've, you know, like we've said, being an active participant in Nashville, yet I've rarely, you know, I've had the good fortune of playing Bridgestone many times and got to play Nissan Stadium a couple weeks ago. You know, those are my experiences of playing in Nashville, but rarely as, you know, just Jay who lives up the street. And this is what I've been up to with my time. I enjoy that aspect of it because I think, you know, we live in a community where because there are so many artists, so many musicians, that it's like, it's not out of the ordinary to see a very well-known, you know, rocker at like fucking Lost Tacos or something like that. Totally. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Morgan Wallen's guitar player, Tyler, I believe. Tyler Cole, I think. Yeah. I see him at Living Waters like almost weekly.
There you go. So, so I find that there's an energy that it's like, I've rarely been home to try to dip into that here myself, but to have the invitation of doing it at the Music City Drum Show, I'm, you know, very excited to get up out of bed, drive up the street and rip a drum clinic and meet all the friendly folks. I'll be doing a, you know, meet and greet sort of signing sort of thing afterwards that the show itself and Zildjian have been very kind in arranging. And so yeah, it's just another one of those, you know, ways where I can arrive at a place and just say like, this is my thing for better or worse. And have some fun with that. Make a whole bunch of noise.
I love that.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, as you put it, the rearview mirror. It's a cool inside look. You know.
Yeah, you know, I think there's something to be said for that, especially with the, you know, the storytelling of what these things. Like I said, it's difficult for a first level listener or somebody who might not know what I've done to kind of illustrate how these things that seemingly are very, you know, the Venn diagrams don't really come anywhere near each other, to show that actually they are way more interconnected than you might realize on the surface.
I can't wait. Yeah, it's going to be 1 p.m. Saturday.
I think 1 p.m. or maybe 2 p.m. Something in the 1 to 2 range. Yeah, something like that.
Earlier.
Okay.
Yeah,
awesome.
Cool.
Okay,
we'll
cool.
Call one.
Yeah,
I'll brush up on that before I get there.
We'll step away from the booth and make sure and walk over and watch you play.
Nice. Okay, cool.
Yeah,
right on.
Founded in 2020, Sonique Drums is dedicated to crafting thoughtfully designed percussion accessories and steam-bent snare drums. Every product is designed and built for drummers who demand quality and reliability. Industry firsts like the NATO family of continually adjustable throw-offs and the socket drum key set Sonique Drums apart from the rest. You can find Sonique snare drums and percussion accessories online or at partner drum shops across the U.S., including Nashville's own Nelson's Drum Shop. Check them out at soniquedrums.com.
Going back to like touring, and I'm sure something I want to know, I'm sure many of our listeners want to know, is just like general, take us into like show prep and mindsets, any rituals, You talked about, again, that kid-like sensation of your sensories start to change, maybe during sound check or as you're seeing VIPs come in and like you it's like, oh, this shit's real, Take us through a typical show, and then also like we talked about like getting that 0.5% better each night. Like what does that look like for you?
Sure. I am, I think, a creature of habit when it comes to preparation. I think a lot of us who have a practice that we do day in and day out, we kind of, maybe there was some event where it's like, hey, that went really well. What did I do today? What did I eat today that, resulted in this fantastic show, And there's also something to be said for when, life becomes chaos as it does. The biggest show I ever played in my life, I had food poisoning, so it's like all that preparation and wanting to create the perfect moment goes completely out the window, and you're like, I feel like absolute shit, and I'm about to play in front of 100,000 people, and this sucks. And you get up there, and it's like, wow, that was actually a really great show. Yeah. Sometimes it lucks out like that, but I am someone who likes to be prepared if I can manage it. So what that kind of looks like for me is I like to make sure I'm well hydrated. Classic stuff. Like I want to be well hydrated for the show, because if I'm not, then my arms become like cement blocks, and I like to eat the right things. I like to have a banana before I play, stuff like that. And just like really, I like to stretch properly and have a good warm-up routine of just, having a little practice set up. Like, for instance, on this Metallica tour we were just on, everything is so fast-paced, and I actually had to, like, construct my drum set in such a way where, like, my drums actually had to get off stage in 5 minutes. Yeah. So everything had to be prepared in such a way where, like, it has to be easy for, like, we're done playing, and all of a sudden 20 local stagehands are going to just rip my drum set into the loading dock right away. And it has to be easy to understand, easy to break down and stuff like that. So I'm very much like a preparation kind of guy.
They weren't just rolling it off of like a cart?
No. And I was set up right on the stage. Yeah, there were no risers on the entire tour. Gotcha. All the drum sets are just on the stage. In fact, Lars's drum sets come up from the stage. So everything is just, there's no drum risers, no anything. It's just all the stage. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so preparing in that way of like, just to make sure the show is the best it can be, I like to put in the effort to make sure it is such. So I like to have my little compact warm-up kit with a little kick pedal and practice pad, my nice little, reflex Zildjian reflex pad. That's really handy and nice for just kind of getting my muscles going and a little bit more resistance than my 48 ply, fast as anything snare drum. Yeah. Often I kind of equate it to like, a hockey player maybe practicing with like a weighted puck. You're stick handling with a weighted puck, and then when you get a normal puck, you're like, whoa, I'm like flying here. Exactly. Yeah. That's kind of how I like to, approach stuff. I mean, you hear stuff about like Gene Hoglan playing with like ankle weights, and Doc Martens when he's warming up, and then he gets on the kit and yeah, right. So I like to, just your classic stuff of trying to maintain your body, the best you can. And because I also know that, the way I approach the drums is very self-destructive to my body. So I just try to counteract that in the ways that I can and be responsible about being knowingly irresponsible with my body on stage. That's all part of it.
We love a good responsibly executed irresponsibility.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Yeah. So I kind of, because by nature, what we're doing is just like it's musical self-destruction. It is. Yeah, it does. If you're a chiropractor looking at the way I play drums, you'd shudder. So it is the way it is. It's the way I like to play, and
for someone that
my body will keep
maybe unfamiliar with that style of your playing, how would you describe it? Besides, as you said, destructive to your body.
It's just everything I got. I don't ever want to come off stage feeling like I had more to give.
And we're talking like wide angle motions,
at times, extreme, sure. I mean, it's funny. I was talking with a friend of mine who I just did a record with, one of my favorite engineers and producers, and he had come to see me when I was playing in Against Me, and he was like, why do you have your cymbals so far away? He's like, your cymbals are like all the way out here. I was like, well, if the music was more complicated, I would have to, move things in for economy of motion. But I like that everything is pretty wide open. It's fairly, intuitive and easy, quote, easy music. But the way you make it more physical and visceral is to really challenge yourself physically. So I'm moving things further away. So it's more of a athletic way of approaching the drums. And as an engineer, he was like, I fucking love that because your cymbals are way up here, your toms are way down here. There's so much separation of everything. And I was like, oh, I didn't think about it like that. And then, when you play in fast metal bands and stuff, everything kind of comes in closer. So I'm kind of like in between the two, I'd say, with my current setup. But yeah, if I were to describe it to anybody, it's just like, I don't know, you're just watching somebody exert all the energy that they have for the rest of the day. And that's how I don't know. That's all I've ever known.
Well, as you said too, you said fans first, right?
Yeah.
And like you're putting on a live show, so people want to see you go crazy.
Sure, yeah.
Band, right?
I mean, Lemmy said it best when he's like, people want to see somebody from some other planet. They don't want to, they don't want to see anything short of that. So it's like you just give it your all. So that's kind of how I just explain the way I've always approached my instrument. But in doing that, it does take, considerable, like you want to be doing it for a long time. You want to be, yes, I don't want to shortchange the live experience, but I also want to be doing this for a long time. And who knows, maybe that'll necessitate, not headbanging as much because, my neck oftentimes feels like it's hanging on by a thread as it is. Right. And I'm only in my early 30s, mid 30s. And I know people who've had strokes that were induced by headbanging, it's no joke. And I'm an advocate for, hearing protection, always trying to be responsible with those sorts of things, just in the interest of having longevity to a career in music, a life in music. And actually one of the things that I've integrated into my setup that's helped me with hearing protection is, because when we're on this stage, we have to wear in-ear monitors to hear each other just because there's no amplifiers and the stage is a fucking football field long. So you gotta have in-ears. And but with the sound dispersion, you can't really feel any like oomph because it just goes everywhere. It's not like a tight rock club with subwoofers and, the power of a like CBGB style stage, which is my favorite visceral kind of feeling to perform in. So having a Porter and Davies throne with the butt kicker.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of good things about this.
Oh man, I can't say enough good things about it. This is the first tour I've ever used it on, and it replicates that subwoofer kind of feeling where I hit my kick drum and I can feel it. Everyone else in the stadium can feel it. But if I didn't have that, I wouldn't be able to feel it. And I would naturally overcompensate by turning my in-ears up by like, I got to feel my kick drum. So I got to have that really loud. Yeah. Now I'm able to take my volume a little bit lower but I still feel it. I get the tactile sensation of that, the butt kicker thing coming from my kick drum. So that's been something that I've integrated into the, the whole experience. Yeah. Just to, I want to feel good playing up there. I've got only 40 minutes on this tour. I want to enjoy every single second of it. So that means preparation, taking care of myself. And if I take care of myself properly, I can self-destruct my body properly and get through the day and get to the next show.
That's the quote of the podcast.
And that's, that's kind of really the name of the game of the last, 15 or so years. And, it's led to some positive results, I believe.
Yeah. I'm sure many would agree. Yeah. That's awesome. I'd love to come see you play live sometime. I've yet to
come on out.
Get to see a show, unfortunately, but
come to a gig, man.
Yeah. What's the rest of the year looking like for you guys?
We're kind of
Suicidal Tendencies, I guess.
Sure, yeah. Now that we just finished up this tour, we have a couple gigs lined up throughout the summer. It's like one show a month. Exciting stuff though. We have a show coming up with Cypress Hill. We have a show coming up with Slayer. Then we link back up with Metallica and Evanescence in Australia and New Zealand at the end of this year, which will be about a month in Australia, which I can't wait for. It's like one of my favorite places ever to play. And besides that, doing my own thing with myself and Argus. We're doing our collaborative set at King Gizzard's Field of Vision Festival. That's really exciting. working on getting all my studio efforts to a point of completion, which is really exciting. Stuff that's in the mixing phase right now that hopefully it's July now. At the earliest I could see myself, sharing some of this stuff would be maybe in like late August, but I'm really trying to hit that. We'll see, see what happens with that. Once I get home from tour, all these other aspirations sort of like start to, come into focus of like, okay, got to get this painting done, got to get this song across the finish line, and all these sorts of things. There's just not enough time in the day, really. Doing more drum clinics is very exciting. I have some of those in the works. Something actually very special for Australia that, if it all works out, is going to happen in the middle of December, which I'm really, really pumped about. So I can't announce it just yet, but that's exciting. What else? Trying to just live a life and just be a person, hang out, reintroduce myself to my dogs.
You're married, right?
Yeah. My wife and I, we love to travel and do stuff. And I often say, I'm the guy out there hitting the drums and stuff, but it's very much like my life and our life as creative people, because my wife's incredibly creative. So much of what I do is the result of like collaboration of the both of us. Like, we talk about creativity, we talk about art and music all the time. We love going to see bands. We love, taking the time to be fans of things and whatever. That's a hugely important aspect of life. I mean, so much of this last tour was like my wife and I just dorking out. Like, we get to watch Metallica like 15 times.
I was looking at your Instagram. I saw the photo of you guys with the
and just enjoying everything that a life and creativity has afforded us, and that we're grateful for. So it's like, why not just do that to the nth degree? And I'm very, very excited about these the collaborations that I have going on that are rooted in my songwriting that I'm very excited about. So yeah, hopefully that stuff starts to make its way out into the world soon. It's been over a decade in the works, and I'm excited about it.
Yeah, well, we're excited as well.
Thank you.
You seem like you just don't stop. That's kind of, have you always been that way?
Yeah, I think so. I think, when it started, when I started in high school, and like I said, just like one foot in front of the other, and nothing has ever changed, even though things might seem like, oh, well, this like big thing is happening or whatever. It's never felt like that to me in some ways. Nothing ever felt like it wasn't the next step. Maybe some that were like was a bigger next step than others. But those are those moments that sometimes consider luck. I think in other instances is preparedness meeting opportunity. And I think
one of my favorite quotes.
Yeah. And I think as those things, you start to develop an affinity for the momentum that those things sort of generate, and like, wow, I'm really liking how this process is feeling and whatever. You just sort of get addicted to the forward momentum of that. And being a productive person, I think I'm very inspired by people in my life and friends of mine, peers of mine who are incredibly productive, who have a lot to show with their time. And so, if that's, I think, maybe a subconscious aspiration of mine, that I just don't like wasting time. I like making the best use of my time. That means I'm very, very busy.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't.
Is finite.
No, we only have so much. Yeah. We only have so much time, man. And life is hard enough. We gotta make the most of it and really make our efforts in this life count. So that's what I'm doing, and I'm happy to be doing it.
Love it.
Kicking ass.
Yeah, man.
Do you want to do some short ones?
Let's do it. Yeah.
Let's do it.
All right, let's do some short ones.
Yeah.
The first one I wanted to ask was I wanted to talk a little bit about your tattoos. Do you have a couple? Any stories behind these? And do you have a couple of like, this is a highlight for me. This is like has a little background. And how many hours of work would you say?
Truthfully, I have no idea how many hours, but one I really like. I just got our youngest dog's name tattooed on me. I've had so our older one is Papaya, and our younger is Pixie. And so I just got Pixie blasted over here because she's always in Papaya's kitchen, always in her face. So I've got her nuzzled up to Papaya.
I love it.
Forever. I've got my Jersey Devil here. That's that I love. That's kind of just a nod to where I'm from. What do I got? I got a Xenomorph because I'm a big Alien fan.
Okay, yeah. We need some other time. Let's talk about Wayland Yutani and all.
Oh, sure, man.
Yeah.
What a parable for life and the complexities of life. Wayland Yutani and evil, overlords and such. Yeah. No, I love I love the sci-fi, everything that the alien universe offers I'm such a fan. So I had to get a xenomorph.
Honestly, when you were talking about it earlier, I was about to ask you, like, do you like Giger? Did you ever get into
yeah.
I was like,
big Giger fan.
That's yeah.
There's actually one instance on tour. We were on tour with Behemoth and Nurgle from Behemoth, who's a good friend. I woke up one day, we were in Switzerland, and he's like, hey, my friends who help run H.R. Giger's estate would like to, they've invited us to go to his house. Would you like to go to his house? And I'm like, I had to pick my jaw up off the floor. So it was an incredible experience. We got to go to the man's house and observe it in the state that it just was left, basically. And his creativity, his studio, all this stuff. You just see his brain is just like how creative he was. And yeah, what an influence for sure. One of my favorite artists ever. Talk about visual art inspirations. H.R. Giger's right up there. Yeah, I don't know. I've got, I just finished up maybe last year or so. I finished up my entire back, which is kind of a nod in some ways. It's a giant gorilla that's on fire. And in some ways it was almost just for the... In some ways, it was almost just for the joke of like, well, I'm never getting this monkey off my back. But
oh my god,
that came to me after the. That came to me. Did it for the bit? No. No, I've always had my family's always had an interest in gorillas, fascination with gorillas. Started with my dad. My dad first showed me King Kong 33 when I was very young. His nickname is Mighty Max is almost it's somewhat, I think it comes from his personality behind the drums, but it definitely stems also from Mighty Joe Young. And so it's kind of like a family sort of nod, almost even a nod to
the way you play.
Yeah, the way he and I both play. We're very different drummers, but I think the one through line that both of us have is our intensity about what we do and with which we play. So that's a little bit of that. And yeah, I'm a big fan. I've been so fortunate to meet great artists all around the world that I've traveled and gotten tattooed, and I don't know. Yeah, you end up just collecting all sorts of stuff, and it just kind of they always say what's the joke that it takes you 5 years to figure out your first tattoo and 5 minutes to figure out your second.
Yeah, exactly.
I'd say that might have been my approach, and I'm losing real estate here, but I don't know. It's a great experience to share with an artist, especially my friend Thomas, who's tattooed me more than anybody. To be open to letting someone's art live on you for the rest of your life is it's a special relationship, as anybody who's gone through that knows. So it's just it's a thing that I very much enjoy, and I'm looking forward to actually getting the rest of my arm finished later this month with Thomas. And it's great to we talk about, just like we're doing here, we talk about art, music, everything, and I've forged many friendships out of tattoo pursuits and stuff.
It's such a personal thing, obviously, to trust someone with that process.
Oh, 100%. Yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah.
Okay, my question. You came in here with coffee. We talked about earlier. You knew it, yeah. What did you say earlier about choosing your next apartment by coffee shops? In the neighborhood. Plug some Nashville shops. Give us your go-to coffee order.
Oh, sure. Elegy is amazing. Love Elegy.
That cold brew.
Yeah. The honey bear is unbelievable.
So
remember any of these? What
Living Waters nearby. If we're talking East Nashville.
Living Waters.
It's
well, so I moved.
Brewery, coffee shop.
Okay, I moved away from the East Side in 2018. So I'm more familiar with stuff in my neck of the woods. But what else we got? Elegy comes to mind. Crema is great.
Yeah. We got Dose.
Yeah, Dose is awesome. Going to Frothy Monkey. Frothy Monkey's always been fine. Barista Parlor's great.
Yeah.
What's
forget specific shops. What's your go-to coffee order?
My go-to coffee order? Well, Elegy, I love the honey bear. Like an oat milk honey bear is pretty amazing on a really hot summer day. I love that.
Will you drink coffee day of a show, or is that more like Red Bull energy drinks?
No, I'll have coffee in the morning, and I kind of like a routine of predictable stuff that I know is not going to upset my stomach. But sometimes, like towards the latter stages of a tour, when it's just like harder and harder to pluck up that energy from, like gotta deliver the same intensity, but I've been at it for 2.5 months, so I'm kind of, running on fumes. Like a little bit of Red Bull will go a long way.
You might need something stronger than the honey bear.
So sometimes I try not to, but sure. A little bit. But yeah, let's say a honey bear from Elegy. Sure.
Okay, and how about food?
Food? What kind of food? What are we talking?
It's Nashville food. What are your
Mas Tacos, 100%. Actually, we had a party at Mas Tacos the night before we played.
Sick.
Nissan and Robert Trujillo from Metallica, who's our bass player Ty's father, came and brought a crew, and we just had a great time. Like I love sharing Nashville food with like all my touring friends and stuff. So whenever we're in town, it's like so it's Mas Tacos, Beehive. If a lot of my vegan friends will be coming to town, we'll hit Beehive or Gray's. Yep. Shout out to them.
Is Gray's still in business?
Oh yeah, totally.
There's one.
They've gotten rid of the grilled. They've gotten rid of the grilled Brussels sprout sandwich, which I'm upset about.
What a tragedy.
Still awesome.
Sounds good.
But yeah, shout out Mas Tacos. It's like legit the best food in Nashville.
They're
I think.
So good.
Yeah.
Do you do hot chicken?
A little bit. It's not necessarily my favorite, and maybe that kind of exposes me as a interloper as a Nashvilleian. But
yes, that is what's going to expose. That Jay Weinberg.
Like, get him out.
No.
I look up to you, man.
Yeah, more for everybody else.
Yeah. It's fair.
Yeah.
What's your favorite noodle?
My favorite noodle? Boy. I like otaku. I have an otaku near me. Yeah. Otaku's pretty great. What else? What was
if you're at home and you're making a noodle.
Yeah, he wants specific noodle versus the shop. But otaku's great.
If I'm at home, I mean, I'm not as like a New Jerseyan who values his Italian food, I like the one that comes in the blue carton. What's the blue carton stuff? That's what I get.
Okay.
What's that shit? I don't even know what it's called. I just know what it looks like, and I just get it.
Yeah, and I'm blanking on it too.
I mean, if we're talking about like type, I'm more of like a rigatoni guy.
Yeah,
if I'm going to Nicolotto's, which is where I'm going after this, I'm gonna go get some rigatoni, maybe marinara, maybe bolognese, maybe pesto. I don't know. Mm-hmm. I'll tell you, I'll prefer tagliatelle if I can find it. But more often than not, you're gonna find rigatoni. That's where I'm at. These are the hard-hitting questions.
It's what I deeply care about.
Okay, yeah.
These are the questions that our listeners have come to expect.
Okay, yeah.
And our guests have never come to be prepared for, but you're doing great.
Thank you.
Well, any parting words? We've got Music City Drum Show, which again, we may not be able to have this aired, but you either gave a fantastic clinic or we're going to promote the
we'll see. The failure that it was. We'll see. I don't know.
Saturday, 1 p.m.
Yes, no. Very, very much looking forward to that. Thanks for having me. It's great to finally meet after been enjoying your podcast for a long time. And it's
I truthfully
awesome
didn't even know you were in town.
Yeah. Well, there you go. So when
it's like JC hit us up, I'm like, wait.
Yeah. Well,
because he was like, he's only in town for a week before tour route. I was like, wait.
Exactly.
Okay,
yeah.
Great,
and that's how it goes. So it's like you'd be forgiven thinking that I'm not in town because I rarely am. But when I am, no, I love being here. It's where I've found a creative life. I found a community that you guys are a part of, and I love being here. So getting to chat about Nashville, being a Nashville drummer, this is what it's all about. So thank you guys for
having you on, and appreciate the time.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Of course.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Nashville Drummers Podcast. If you liked it, please consider leaving us a review on the Apple Podcast app. Please consider supporting us on Patreon. For $5 a month, you can help support this dream and keep the ball rolling for us. Believe it or not, it's not free or even necessarily cheap for us to make this thing go. To sign up, go to patreon.com/Nashville Drummers Podcast or click the link in our Instagram bio. All of your help is greatly appreciated.
Visit our website, NashvilleDrummersPodcast.com, where you can listen to all past episodes, learn more about myself and Nate, and buy all your favorite Nashville Drummers Podcast merch, including t-shirts, tank tops, sweatshirts, hats, and drum heads. Connect with us on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and YouTube at Nashville Drummers Podcast. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Feelings of